In this video, we're going to talk about my top 5 substrates for planted tanks. Check it out. Hey guys, welcome to another video, and this is an aquarium channel. So if you like aquariums, you want to learn more about aquariums, please hit that subscribe button and that bell icon. So here are my top 5 substrates for planted aquariums. So what this list is a combination of my experiences as well as some combinations of the pricing, how easy it is for beginners, and how easy it is to use. You also notice that each time I talk about substrate, you will see this down here, and that's just the stats of the substrate to help you out, to help you figure out if this substrate's for you or if something that you want to try. So let's get to it, shall we? So coming in on number 5 is Ccam Fluorite. Now Ccam Fluorite you can find in pretty much any local fish shop or pet store or what have you, so it's pretty readily available. It's a clay-based substrate. It's not loaded with nutrients, but it has the micronutrients that you would get from that type of substrate. The great thing about this substrate is that you have many choices when it comes to color as well as the type of substrate. Is it regular medium substrate or is it fine sand type of substrate? My personal favorite is Fluorite Red. I love the color and I love how it makes my tank look. From my experience as well as from what I read on the internet is that even though it's a clay-based substrate, the CC value of this substrate is okay. There are better substrates out there that has better CC value. But sometimes you can't argue the results, right? One thing that they brag in their marketing material is that you don't have to change out fluorite. And from my experience, you don't. It actually doesn't break down, or at least it takes forever to break down. So that's one thing that you have something to look forward to. Now, the biggest con that stopped me from using fluorite is that it's very messy. I have rinsed this stuff over and over again. I mean, really thoroughly rinsed it out, and there was still tons of dust in it. Now, for some people, I read that they have a lot more luck, cleaning it out. They must have cleaned it out longer, or maybe they got a better batch of it or something. I don't know. But for me, that kind of just turned me off to the substrate itself. It's a lot of work, but there's other substrates out there that will give you the same results with less work. Other than the micronutrients that would come with this type of substrate, it's not really nutrient loaded like, say, ADA aqua soil. So you will have to dose your water column or at least put in root tabs so that all those nutrients can be held by the substrate itself. And finally, unless you're getting the black sand type of substrate, it is known to be sharp and rigid and stuff, so it's not really good for bottom dwellers. And for someone like me who loves my choriodalysis, yeah, it's a little concerning. So that's something that you have to think about. Now the fluorite, the pricing itself varies depending on the type of fluorite you get. So it actually comes from cheap to medium expense. Number 4, ADA Aquasoil Amazonia. Now yeah, you're like, why does it come in fourth? Well, let's go through it here. ADA is very popular, especially for the dry start method. It's loaded with tons of nutrients and it gives you great results when growing plants. It's a well-known substrate. It is made popular by Amano himself. They have this whole ADA substrate system going, which could cost a pretty penny. Now, the problem with ADA Aquasoil is that it breaks down after a year and a half. Some people have more luck of it going longer, but it does break down, and you're going to have to change out the whole system or, replant a whole new tank. Another con, but a little con, does leach tannins, but of course, to take care of tannins, you just do water changes and wait for it to go away or use charcoal or some kind of other water purifier. So yeah, it's not that big of a deal. It's also known to cloud your tank during setup or during when you're moving plants around. But if you're someone like me who don't like moving the plants around too much, it shouldn't be a big deal. And of course, it always clears up. But there's 2 cons to this that made it number 4 on my list. The first factor is the expense. It is pretty expensive for substrates. So if you're doing something small tank, it shouldn't be that bad. Something like 10 gallons or whatever. Anything larger though, it's going to start hitting your wallet and you're going to notice. The second factor is that it's known to leach ammonia, and it leaches a lot of it. Before things like the dry start method, you want that kind of ammonia in the substrate itself because it helps kickstart the cycle in the substrate itself during the dry start method period. And for cycles, of course, it's perfect. You want ammonia to jumpstart that cycle and build the bacteria up in your filter. Problem comes though is when you want to take an established tank and then switch out your substrate. It's not a good idea, and it's not great for beginners unless you know what you're doing. It's going to leach ammonia, and next thing you know, it's going to cause a bio crash, and then all your fish die and everything dies and the world blows up. Okay, not that extreme, but you know what I mean. So make sure you keep that in mind. It does leach ammonia, and for some people they say, and from my experience, it does leach a lot of ammonia where it does burn some stem plants. Flooville stratum comes in number 3 on my list. Now it's Flooville. Who can argue that? Flooville is a big company. There's a lot of resources behind it. They're always stepping up the research to get the next best product out there. It's also marketed to be formulated for shrimp, which makes it very popular for the shrimp tank aquariums. It will lower the pH as well as have the micronutrients to help the plants grow. And of course, being a volcanic soil type of substrate, it has a very good CEC value. However, there are some cons. First of all, it's very light. So for some plants, it's really hard to actually anchor to the substrate itself. They'll sometimes float away. But that just might be a minor annoyance. Another con is that some people say that it clouds the tank, but like all substrates that clouds the tank, it will go away after a while the filtration's going and after it settles. So it might not be a big deal breaker for you. The final con about stratum is that it's expensive. It's as much as ADA Aquasoil. So if you ever find yourself choosing between ADA Aquasoil or stratum, you're gonna have to weigh out the differences and see which one's more worth it for you. Coming in at number 2 is Carb Sea Eco Complete. Okay, Eco Complete's been in the market for a little bit and it's actually pretty good stuff, especially for beginners. It's volcanic rock based substrate and it has a very high CEC value, so it's great for storing those nutrients for those root feeding plants. It's a great iron source, so it's really perfect for those red plants too. It also comes in a live format, which the bag has actual water in it, as well as live bacteria that helps jumpstart the cycle of your tank. Now, whether or not that actually works, I don't know. I never paid attention to that part of it. And there's actually some arguments going on if whether or not it works or it's just a marketing ploy. Finally, it's really easy to find and it has a great price point, especially for a branded substrate brand. And some of the cons is that it's not nutrient loaded, so you're going to have to dose your water column as well as use root taps. Finally, the other con is that the granules are a little big and sharp, so that's not all that great for your bottom dwellers. So for all you bottom dwelling fish keepers, that might be something you need to think about. Finally, for number 1 on our list, but before we do that, a word from our sponsors. I don't have any, so let's move on. So number 1 on my list is, of course, if you've watched my channel, if you've been following me, it's organic soil. Okay, so it's not a branded substrate, but in my opinion, and from the use of it for the last year, I love this stuff. I love the technique. It makes my plants grow like crazy. Of course, it's nutrient rich. It's filled with nutrients because, again, it's soil. It's nature. It's, what's out there. It's cheap. Well, depending on the brand you get. Of course, you want to get the organic kind, okay? And anything with organic in it usually means they're going to add a couple bucks to it. But that happens everywhere. Organic burgers at $1. Organic celery at $2. Organic tomatoes at $5. Organic TV at $100. Organic Disneyland at another $1,000. It doesn't matter. You can't afford to go to Disneyland anyways because they're so damn expensive. Okay, so here I am touting soil because it's awesome, a lot of nutrients, it makes your plants grow great. But there are, of course, cons. One of the cons being is that it leaches ammonia. It will leach ammonia. So just like ADA Aquasoil, it leaches ammonia, but not as bad as ADA Aquasoil. But you have to keep that in mind is if you want to swap out your substrate on an established tank, that you will get ammonia spikes. Depending on the brand that you use, you might have some cleanup work during setup. This might include shifting the soil because the soil I use sometimes have large wood pieces in it. Sometimes you get a lot of floating pieces, so you're going to have to skim the tank while you're flooding it. But all in all, it's not that bad. It might be an annoyance. The next content is that you need a cap. You don't want to put regular soil in there because it will get really, really dirty. Of course, you're going to have to use caps, so that means adding another expense to your substrate. But for a cap, you could actually use any of the substrate I mentioned before, or you could use something really cheap like poo filter sand. Just make sure you don't use playground sand. You want to use something with bigger granulars like, again, pool filter sand. Now, one thing a lot of people worry about is the mess it'll make if you keep replanting plants in your tank. That is somewhat true, but it's not as bad as they think. For planted tanks, you don't want to uproot your plants and then move them around because that's bad for the plants. But there are cases where you're going to have to. So while you're pulling the plants out of the substrate, it's going to pull the soil along with it and then land on top of the cap and you have a mess. It really isn't that bad. You just go ahead and replant your plants and then you do your water change. During the water change, you just go ahead and skim the top of the cap of any soil that has gotten loose and it'll just go away. And the final con to using soil substrate is that you have to replace it after a couple years. The soil will start losing its nutrients and there's no other way other than just go ahead and replacing it. So that is one of the bad cons I hate about using soil. But again, for a guy like me, I tend to rescape my tanks and redo my tanks almost, every year and a half. So unless you're going for the very, very long term, it might be something that you have to think about. And this is the end of the video, and this is where you go away by clicking something else. But if you're new and you're still here, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, like this video. And I hate doing these endings, so I will see you in the next video.